Hi, I'm Hannah from 21stCenturyKY.com, and I am ready to start talking about play. In my last couple of blog posts, we talked a little about the research behind play and whether or not play should be a four-letter word. And I don't think it should. I think play should be in the classroom, most definitely, especially in the 21st century. It's how 5 and 6 year olds learn best. They need to be immersed in their learning. They need to be able to connect background experiences. They need to be able to pretend and experience on every level. And they need to have that social aspect as they're growing from that sort of egocentric way of thinking into finding their place in their family, in their classroom, and in the world. And so I 100% believe it should be a priority in the kindergarten schedule. But I also think that teaching to the standards should be a priority and that time is of the essence during the school day. We know that kindergarten has become the new first grade, or so they say. And so a lot of the academics are being pushed down into kindergarten, and that sometimes pushes out play. So I had to find in my own kindergarten classroom a balance. And in our last post, we talked about how to provide structured play opportunities that are standards aligned, and we came up with a year-long plan. I shared with you my plan. If you haven't picked up that freebie, go back to that blog post. The link is in this blog post. Get the freebie so that you can start planning for yourself. You can also download my year-long plan and see how I connected standards from ELA, math, science, social studies, and even technology and the arts into my play opportunities. You know, that really gave me a leg to stand on. If my administrator came in my room and it seemed like chaos to the outsider, I was able to say exactly what we were doing, how it tied to the standards, and boy did I see the proof in the pudding. My kids did better on our standardized test. Their stamina was built. They were able to attend to my lessons when it was time for me to teach, and it made the biggest difference in my kindergarten instruction. So I urge you to check out those posts as we get ready to talk about the year month by month. In my last blog post, I talked a lot about the month of August, and I said that I just sort of put opportunities out there that I consider to be generic. We had a housekeeping center, blocks, cars and trucks, computers, things that kids probably have at home or they've experienced in a preschool environment, and they probably already know the ins and outs of playing with those types of toys and other manipulatives. But really, I use the month of August to sort of set our ground rules and, you know, to set our standard for play. That meant we talked a lot about sharing, how to talk to each other, how to ask when you want to join play, or how to plan for play with each other so that, you know, there weren't too many people at one center, and just sort of how to manage that. But it's all very organic. You know, I don't make a whole lot of rules. Everybody doesn't have a clip that they have to move every time they move centers. You know, there's a little bit of organizational tips that I'll be happy to share with you later, but for the most part, it was really just us finding our way as a classroom community and my kids learning my expectations when playtime comes, because I have high expectations all day long, and that includes playtime. It's not a free-for-all. You know, we don't use outside voices and we don't throw things, and so there needs to be some time for kids to understand that, while the play opportunities are really low-key. So that's what we do for the month of August. In the month of September, we sort of amp it up a little. Our overall theme, because I like to teach in themes, our overall theme for the month of September is community. In August, we talk a lot about the classroom community. We talk about kids and their role in their family, because that's their first sort of community, and their role in our classroom, and then of course they're learning school rules. In September, we just kind of notch it up a little bit, and we start talking about our town. We talk about community helpers, you know, just in a very broad sense, about different workers in our school, in our community, and even pushing beyond our community, maybe within our state. We visit the fire station. We live in a town with a wonderful university. We visit the university. We just really, we have a career fair where we bring in professionals from every single profession you can imagine. I have a wonderful team teacher who plans that for us, and we rotate and get to visit these little displays that they set up outside and inside, and learn all about everything from electricians to teachers to mechanics to artists. They bring the fire truck and the police cars and an ambulance, and our local Dairy Queen brings samples and talks about working at Dairy Queen. And so we really immerse our kids in this idea that everybody has a role, everybody has a job, and within our community, the grown-ups in our community have these roles and have these jobs that help us, provide services to us. And so in playtime, we carry over that theme. And our play theme for the month of September is restaurant. And you can check back on my planner to see all the standards that we cover during that play. But for now, I'll just give you a snapshot of what each center is like for the month of September. The main center where restaurant play takes place, obviously, is going to be the housekeeping center. But I change out what's available. I leave the kitchen, the dishes, the pots and pans, the food, of course, and cups and utensils. But I take out the baby dolls and any of that sort of family type play. I have a thing about baby dolls. It's just my own little pet peeve. Ask any of the teachers I work with. I can't stand naked baby dolls. What is it about kids? They take the clothes off the baby dolls and they don't put them back on. I don't tolerate it at home with my own children, and I certainly don't tolerate it at school because I just think it's inappropriate. Nobody leaves their baby at home naked. It has clothes on. So to alleviate all that, the baby dolls in my classroom have permanent clothes, the kind that are painted or sewn on and you can't take them off. And the girls just tend to fight over them, girls and boys, fight over the babies. You can only have so many. It's an issue. They're very immature at the beginning of the year, and we fight through it and we work through some of those issues in the month of August, but in September, they're out because I really want to start their focus on planning their play, on taking on different roles and interacting. And so making the premise the restaurant sets it up for that, and taking away those distractions just makes it easier. So we leave all the kitchen-y cooking stuff. I add to it the number one best thing that kids love in any play center, and that's aprons. I went to Lowe's or Walmart and got the cheap little handyman just waist aprons. I had some bigger ones that fit over their whole body, but the waist aprons are their favorite. They can put their little waitress pad in there, or note paper, and their pencil, and whatever else, and they love playing with those. Of course, I can't have 24 of those either, so we have to start setting up systems for sharing, and that's where the planning comes in. Who's going to be the waitress or waiter? Who's going to be the customer? Who's going to be the cook? And then of those people, who needs to wear the waist apron? Probably the waitress or the cook. So we begin to work through some of those issues as they play together. I also went on TPT and found some really cute, just printable play activities, little menus that you can print out and laminate. There's all kinds of little guest checks that you can print out. You can create your own easily, an open and a close sign. We pull out the cash register with a limited amount of play money, not a whole lot, but enough to where they can start to pretend. The other thing that the kids really love with the restaurant center was I went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of sponges and little towels, and I cut the little dish towels up, and they can clean their cooking area and clean the seating area, the tables, after their customers have been served. And then I provide placemats, tablecloths, whatever they need to set up their restaurant. And that is all in sort of the housekeeping area. I continue to leave the blocks out, and that's something that stays out all year long, because there's always a little group of kids that would they can plan their own play without a lot of intervention from me. And so especially the second month of the year, if they are more comfortable, typically boys, but not always. If they're more comfortable heading over to the Legos and working out their own scenarios, I kind of leave them be. There are other times in the year where it's not really an option. They sort of have to join whatever the opportunities are that I've set out on intentionally. But at this point, I sort of let them do their thing. On the computers, I set up opportunities for them to use the calculator on the computer to add up their totals. They love to punch the numbers. The same could be done with a tablet. There's also, if you search, lots of fun online games for preparing food. All those little cupcake maker games or muffin maker games where they can go in and they have to do things in a certain order. They love that kind of stuff, and that's the kind of stuff they do at home, really, is they like to play those little free things on the tablets at home. So I set that up on the computer because kindergartners at the beginning of the year have got to learn how to use a mouse. I don't know about your school, but at our school we do some testing online on the computer, and it's on desktop computers in our lab, and kids come to kindergarten not knowing how to use a mouse because we don't have those at home anymore. We have laptops with touchpads, or we have iPads, and they don't know how to use a computer mouse. So I want to get them on those computers pretty early on, and so I set up those situations for them there in the month of September. And then I pull back on the cars and the trucks and stuff like that, and I just really limit the options in this way. I provide them with that first little bit of an idea, and as things sort of grow and evolve, I respond to them over the month of September. But I'm really focused on them beginning to take on a role in their play and planning their play experience around the theme of restaurant. In October, we sort of continue with that community helper sort of underlying theme, but then we move a little bit into what my team, we've called Focus on the 21st Century Student Learner Standards, and we actually bring those out as part of our thematic learning and part of our writing and reading, and we talk about what it means to be a 21st century learner. And I teach my kids that I was a 20th century learner. I'm a 21st century teacher, but I was a 21st century learner. And what does that mean? And in what century did their parents and grandparents live? And how are things different from them and for them? And then, what does it mean to be a 21st century learner? And really, it means that you take all those same things that I learned as a 20th century learner, but you add sort of that element of creativity, the element of collaboration, the element of leadership, and of course technology gets involved. And so our October theme is the news, and all of our play experiences revolve around the news. And one particular year, my class, we worked on the news project, and we set up a news show and made a video and showed it to our parents. It was tons of fun. In other years, it doesn't get taken that far. Maybe the materials are there, but the kids don't really buy in, or it's just not their cup of tea. But really, October's the first month where I really start to take over, and I really start to drive their play. In the Dramatic Play Center, the kitchen is gone, all the food's gone, all that stuff is gone. They come in one morning and I have removed it from the classroom. It's heartbreaking. They are so sad until they realize what new options they have. I put up an easel with some green paper to be their green screen. As part of our 21st century field trip over to the university, we visit the television station, and so they get to see what it's like to put on a news show. So by the time I pull these things out, they're learning what a green screen is. They're learning about soundboards. They're learning about cameras. And so they've seen all of that as part of our field trip and experience. I took a lot of pictures of the field trip and made a little scrapbook for them so that they could look back on their experience in order to guide their play. So we were just really lucky to have that experience to make this theme work. They put up the paper for the green screen. I just created my own little printables, found some other free ones online. I printed out a map of the United States where they could create their own weather map. They could post it on that easel or on that green screen and pretend to be giving a weather report. We also because we had seen what it was like to put on a real news show, and you could easily do a virtual field trip, I'm sure, online if you don't get to go to a real news studio like we did. But since they had seen that, they understood about soundboards and stuff like that. So I pulled in several big sets of headphones, and I went around, begged, borrowed, and confiscated 4 or 5 computer keyboards, not the computer, just the keyboard. I also had a random abacus in my room, and then I had some, I don't know why, but we had a cardboard box. I think we got a shipment of something I had ordered, and so we had a cardboard box. Somehow that came into play as well. But it was amazing what they did with those few things. Also, I just had some random cords because we had seen that there were lots of cords when we were there. So I might have a couple like HDMI old internet cords that I would put in there that they could use. If I had it, I would have put a camera in there, real or an old one that didn't even work. That will definitely be something that I go back and add the next time I teach this theme. And yeah, so that's what would be in that dramatic play area. What was in the dramatic play area would grow though, because what I required in the block center, I let my guys go to the block center that still like to play blocks, but they had to plan. They had a piece of paper where they could draw and plan, and then they had to create something that related. They created soundboards. They created microphones out of blocks and Legos that the news anchors could hold. They made some things that looked like cameras and some other contraptions. I also set up for them, which just so happened to be near the carpet, had a smart board in my classroom, and I pulled the document camera up on the smart board, and I turned the document camera up and turned it around because it's upside down. I don't know how that works, but anyway, got the document camera out and faced it to where my kids could sit, and they could sit and do the news broadcast, and it would broadcast up on the smart board. How simple is that? That we weren't even recording anything, but I would just turn the camera on for them, and they'd sit in front of it and watch themselves on the big screen. On the computer, we added a writing center area to the computer, and so then we talked about other ways that we get our news, and there we had printables of just a blank newspaper layout where they could put pictures and write some copy for a little newspaper, their own personal newspaper. I also put little templates of tablets and phones where they could make their own little tweets or Instagrams, or however. We just really focused on that 21st century skill communicating, and how do you get news out there, and then just what are all the facets that go with that. And so, you know, my favorite was to see them start to take on those roles and plan that play. And you might have one child sitting at the little table in front of the green screen with a microphone made out of Legos, talking while another kid is pretending to video them, while another kid is sitting with headphones and the abacus pretending like they're adjusting the volume for their mic. And it just really grew into this really great project. It's relatable, but it sort of was taking them to the next level with their play. Clearly, I could talk about that one all day. It was a good one. Last for this post, because we're kind of running long, would be November. So we'll get through these fall months with this post. But in November, our theme was travel. And I pulled all of that newsy stuff out and really began to, our overarching theme obviously went along with Thanksgiving, with the Pilgrims coming to North America and their interaction with the Native Americans and how they learned to cooperate and work together and be friends, about the first Thanksgiving feast, and what it was like for them to come here and start a new place to live, what it was like for the Native Americans to have new people come into their home. And so our play centers revolved around travel. I pulled back out some of the cars and trucks and added them into the block center so that they could create modes of transportation. If you had to travel somewhere, how are you going to get there? And they built ships and boats and airplanes and all kinds of other things. There are lots of things you can find online to put at the computers. We at the writing center, we had all kinds of lists where they could work on packing. What would you take with you if you were going on the Mayflower? What would you need? What might you write back home to tell about your experience? And it wasn't limited to travel from long ago. What would you pack if you were going to the beach? What might you pack? And so they would work on list making and writing there. In the Dramatic Play Center, I started in one direction and it ended up in another because my kids were just truly innovative this last time I taught kindergarten. And I intended to have suitcases and clothes and things like that they could practice packing and traveling, but I had a hard time coming up with that stuff. And so we started out at the Dramatic Play Center with just maps, a couple globes, and some travel brochures for different places. And so my kids started playing, and I was saying that you could plan a trip. So we were going to call it a travel agency. And I had the leftover weather maps, and we used those. And then I also had printed off maps of the world where they could mark where they wanted to go. Where are we? How are they going to get there? What would be the plan? And then next thing I know, my kids have set up at this, they've scooted over the table, and they have these rows of chairs. And I said, what's going on over here, guys? What are you working on? And one of them says, well, this is the plane. And I said, oh, and they said, yeah, we're having a plane. And some other kids said, well, we're the ones traveling. And this one was the the flight attendant who was bringing them snacks on the plane and telling them where they were headed. And so they were booking flights at the travel agency, making a trip plan, and then enacting that travel. So I just said, great, let's run with that. And some days they would line the chairs up and it would be a ship, and they would be going on the cruise, or they'd be the pilgrims coming to America. And so it sort of became the travel agency. So I gave them some printables that looked like tickets and passports, and they would get their travel plan. And then I gave them some empty brochures. They were really interested in the brochures. If you travel at all, or you can write to places and collect those for your kids, they love them. So then, I put some blank brochure templates at the writing center where they could create their own about a place that they wanted to go. And so it really spun into something that I wasn't necessarily intending, but it was where they took play. And that, I think, is the beauty of setting up these structured, standards-based play opportunities, that you have a goal in mind, you have a concept you want them to work on and learn, but yet you're letting the kids have ownership. When I put these things out here and I have in mind the direction I want it to go, I am not so controlling that I tell them what they have to do. And if they start to take it in another direction, I just follow them and just keep providing whatever it is they need. Because when they get so sophisticated that they plan, execute, and build upon their play, that is when you have reached the pinnacle of play in the classroom. And so as the teacher, my role is to observe, my role is to provide, intervene when necessary, because, they still squabbled over those aprons or over the cash register. But really to just be there to support and extend and further their opportunity so that they start to feel comfortable and they start to take it to that new level. And once they take control, that is the epitome of student-centered learning. They're fully engaged, they're in control, and I feel good because I know that I've set up these opportunities based on my standards and based on the best ways that children can learn. So I feel like this was kind of a long one, but if you stuck with me, thank you so much. Clearly this is a passion for me, and I've loved sharing with you about the first 4 months of my school year. Next time we're together, we'll talk about December, January, and February, and how I set up the centers for those months. If you use any of these ideas, I'd love to hear from you. If you have others, I'd love to hear from you on that too, because the sky's the limit, really, when you start thinking about your content, thinking about your kids, and the opportunities you can provide them. Thanks a lot.